Hello, my Sunday. This first clip is from the United States of America, but it's a similar position in the United Kingdom. Down at the bottom is what's called ideal. Now, this is for ideal distribution of wealth across the society. Now, who says it's ideal or why they say it's ideal, we'll leave aside. In the United States of America, all the men, women, old, Hispanic, all of these types of different people have been asked what they think the wealth distribution actually is. And most all of them, it's surprising that none of them get it anywhere near right, and they all get it wrong in about the same ways. So there's really no disparity between all people asked how they think the wealth distribution actually is. And estimated is their representation of what they think it is. Oh, it's all right. Above is what it actually is. Now, you can see in estimated they think the top 20% and the second 20% have about 3/4 of the wealth of the United States, when the actual story is that the top 20% have about 80% of the actual wealth. The next 20% have the next 15, leaving 5% for the bottom 60%. Now, I'm putting this up because of the stress on actual wealth, that there is actual wealth there established and out there. And in this fiscal cliff, we're going to have things like capital gains tax is going to go up, and all sorts is going to go up. Everyone's going to have to pay more. But the thing is, the wealth is already established. When you hear statistics on income and income tax, like we can say that the top 20% and the second top 20%, the top 40% pay, I don't know, what would it be in America, about 80% of all income tax paid, 70-80% of all income tax paid, and the green sliver and downwards pay very little income tax paid. It's the truth. The top do pay just about all the income tax, but it doesn't encroach on their already amassed wealth. They've got it, as it were. So you can put income tax up, you can even put capital gains tax up, and tax on dividends on stocks, but it's not going to encroach much into their actual wealth, because what I'm stressing here is they've already got the actual wealth. They've got it. And you can tax on this, that and the other, but unless you get it and get into that, you've got to get in, if you want to get it, you've got to go in and get it where it is, as opposed to just nibbling at what is on the edges and what kind of jumps off and jumps back in again and try and grab that. The actual wealth is already owned by the top people, right? Okay, I think I've stressed that enough now. Yeah. I'll just throw in that, no I won't. Okay, let's go over to the United Kingdom. And this was in this morning's Telegraph. Just 3 paragraphs to read. Paul Tucker, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, told an October meeting of the chief executives of Britain's largest banks that there was a serious chance none of their businesses would survive to the end of the year. This was the end of last year. Gentlemen, you could all be out of business by Christmas, Mr. Tucker said in a stark warning to the bank chiefs, according to 3 sources present at the meeting. The revelation of Mr. Tucker's remarkable warning shows the depth of fear among senior officials of the Bank of England over the havoc the collapse of the Eurozone would wreak on the British financial system. 2 things there. The importance of the European mess, and how weak the British financial system is if a mega mess comes from anywhere. But the big finger is pointing towards the possibility of it being Europe, a European mess, which knocks us on to, imagine, we know that Geithner's been over and tried to tell them what to do, but what stresses will be coming from the exterior to influence the people that they think they can influence in Europe to hold this bloody thing together, this Euro thing, because we don't want to be dragged down by you. Imagine the stresses and strains basically being put on Germany to bail out the system, or Germany to let the European Central Bank bail out the system, not understanding that the European Central Bank really can't bail out the system. I'll just repeat, because maybe you didn't hear yesterday or the day before what's going on. On the bank's books, let's say in Europe, are mainly government bonds. There's loads of mortgages that are going bad as well. And that was the 1 trillion that was going bad. But the government bonds are the thing that the central bank's chosen, and the powers that be have chosen to keep up the price of the government bonds of all Eurozone countries, sovereigns, so as to keep the banks' books together, because it's mainly the banks in Europe that's pulling the euro down. And it's the banks leaning on the sovereigns, and the sovereigns being tumbled over by the banks, and the sovereigns getting into trouble because of the banks, and the sovereigns that were weak anyway because they'd already been spending lots of money and were up to this high debt to GDP sort of numbers. But the effort is to keep up the price of the sovereign bonds so as to keep the banks solvent. If it really came to shove, you can imagine that the Bank of England and the Fed will buy those peripheral government bonds to keep the European banking system up. Because if the European banking system goes down, the British banking system goes down, you can imagine what the ramifications would be around the world. Right, I'll just finish here in The Guardian UK. Dear George Osborne, it's time for Plan B, says top economists. 7 leading economists on what Chancellor basically chipping in and saying that the Chancellor in the UK should change direction from this austerity thing, and Stiglitz and Krugman are in there. But among the 7 is what I really wanted to note was our friend Steve Keen. I'll leave a video below as well, just for your edification. Bye.